In this tutorial, we're going to be talking about how to correct kyphosis in 4 simple steps. Now, these are the fundamentals. We're going to be then building into some exercises, but again, we can't forget the fundamentals because that is the main thing that people either forget or don't even know about in the first place. If you're watching this video, you're probably watching because you have kyphosis. But if you have lordosis with that, which is a hyperextension of the lumbar spine, then you can find out about my How to Correct a Lordosis 12-week program, which includes a kyphosis workshop and workout, because they are, or they can be, one and the same thing with regards to the spine. So if you want to correct your lordosis and your kyphosis, please do click the link below and you can get started with the 12-week program. Part number 1, we've got to understand where is your kyphosis. Now, if you've got kyphosis, we know it's in the thoracic spine. So it's this exaggerated curve of the thoracic spine. There is possibly also some rounded shoulders. I won't cover that in this tutorial, but if you go through to the How to Correct Lordosis 12-week program, in the kyphosis workshop, it's added into there. So we've got that exaggerated curve of the thoracic spine. Now all we need to understand is it low, is it high, or is it pretty consistent all the way through? Once we can understand that, we can go on to the next part, which is then actually starting to correct it. But again, as I mentioned, we've got to think about some fundamentals first before we then start using any stretches and exercises. Part number 2 is segmenting the spine. Now, what does that mean? Well, essentially it means breaking the spine up into its parts. So we're going to just be talking about the lumbar spine, the thoracic spine, and the cervical spine. Now, this is a part that so many people miss, in so much as they don't realise that they might not be extending their thoracic spine. They might be going into a similar position and finishing up in a similar position, but they might not be getting the extension or the elongation through the thoracic spine. So what this basically means is, if I just use a roller here, now you can use anything that is it's an edge that you can extend over. Obviously I'm using a roller, it could be a series of cushions, or it could be anything. So what we do is we come down and we place that right onto where the base of the ribs, which is roughly where the thoracic spine meets the lumbar spine. So what we want to do is, when people mainly come into this position, they will extend over. Now, they will probably be getting some extension from the thoracic spine, but what they will also be getting is some extension or hyperextension through the lumbar spine. Now, that's something that we want to avoid. So when we segment the spine, we want to be able to just hold this in position and just extend the lumbar spine. So I'm just using my hands to make sure that I'm not overextending. So my ribs at the front aren't leaving my pelvis. So I can hold there and I can extend over. The other thing that we need to manage is the cervical spine. So again, when people come over, it's going right back like that. So again, we've got sort of a packed neck, so we're just tucking the chin towards the chest, and then we're making sure that we're extending the thoracic spine, which is the very part of the spine that we want to be extending. And we're not doing, say, 30% extension from the thoracic spine, 30% from the lumbar spine, and 30% from the cervical spine. Don't quote me on those numbers, but that's the kind of idea. We want to try and get 100% from the thoracic spine. So as we then start mobilizing it, it's going to be much easier when we go into the next part. Because what we've talked about so far is we understand where the kyphosis is. So what we can do, if it's consistent all the way through, we would do, say, 1, 2, 3 mobilizations, or a stretch. We would then come down, 1, 2, 3. So we're a little bit higher up the thoracic spine. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm obviously rushing through that, but you can start to see that I'm not only extending the thoracic spine. I'm trying to mobilize different parts of it. So we've segmented the spine into lumbar, thoracic, cervical. Now we're segmenting the thoracic into its, let's just say, lower, middle, and upper. And then depending on where your kyphosis is, if it's higher up, you can spend more time there. If it's lower down, you can spend more time there. If it's consistent throughout, you can spend the same time all the way through. Parts 3 and 4 are very similar. So what we're going to talk about in part 3 is extending the thoracic spine. So I've opened and introduced that in part 2 where we segment it. Now, we used a either stretch postural position or a mobilization postural position as the example. Now, that needs to be done through everything, through all the exercises, through all the stretches, so you're extending the thoracic spine. So again, you're thinking about the segmentation of the spine and the segmentation of the thoracic spine, and then you're going into a stretch, you're going into an exercise, extending that thoracic spine, which is essentially part number 4, which is you actively need to extend the spine. This is probably the least done thing in posture training. You're given an exercise, you're given a stretch, and you just go and get into the position. So it might be that you are given a stretch like we've just done. So you're given that stretch and you're told, take your arms over your head and go into that position. But you've not been told about what the lumbar spine shouldn't be doing, what the cervical spine shouldn't be doing, and what the thoracic spine should be doing. So you need to be consciously aware of that. So when you come into an exercise, so if I just use a very simple exercise, just a half kneeling exercise, and I'm sort of rounded, and I'm then told to sort of go like that and across, or extend through the shoulders, what's happening is I'm completing the task of what the person's telling me to do, which is lift my arms up over my head. But what I'm not doing is completing the task of actually the very thing that you're trying to achieve, which is extending the thoracic spine. So what we've essentially done is we've mobilized the spine using that arching over exercise, for example. Then we're coming up into an exercise. So we've just mobilized it. So what we now need to do is actively use that mobility that we've just created. So what we do, instead of just going like that, we want to go up, bring the shoulders back, and then get a little bit extra if we can through here. But again, what we're not trying to do, which was part number 2, which is segmenting the spine, what we're not trying to do is that, which again is hyperextending at the hip, hyperextending potentially at the lumbar spine. We're maintaining that posture through there and just trying to get everything through the thoracic spine, because it's that's extending the spine. So it's not necessarily the exercise that is going to achieve correcting lordosis. It's how you perform the exercise. Yes, there are certain exercises that are going to be more effective than others, i.e. getting arms over the head, as I've showed you with regards to extending the thoracic spine. That's obviously going to be helpful from the exercise itself. But if you come into this exercise with a rounded spine and just lift your arms over your head, it's not achieving what you want to achieve, but you're still doing the exercise and still completing the exercise. So again, you've got to think, how am I performing the exercise? And that comes from the first 3 parts, which is number 1, knowing where your kyphosis is, number 2, being able to segment the spine and control that, and then 3, being able to extend the thoracic spine. Once you do that, you can then actively come up into the position that you want to be. And it's that that's going to correct your posture, not a posture exercises. It's all about how you perform it rather than the actual exercise that you're doing. So the power lies within you to correct it. The power doesn't lie within the exercise to correct it. If you're performing it correctly, you're going to correct it. So hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully it's given you a better idea of how to correct your kyphosis, possibly giving you a couple of examples. But as I mentioned, if you've got lordosis and kyphosis, click in the link below. you can learn how to correct the both of them through workshops, tutorials, and workouts. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris from Christopher Hall Training. I'll speak to you in the next tutorial.